What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Concussion Discussion Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Sherlock. Thank you guys for tuning in. Before we get this thing kicked off, I want to apologize. I wanted to get this out a little bit sooner, but as you guys know, as everyone knows, life happens. So I was in Atlantic City on Saturday night for the fight, spent Sunday in Atlantic City, didn't get back until a little bit later. Monday, someone smashed my car, so still trying to figure that whole piece out. And then last night, I was really motivated to get this episode done, but, I laid down and my girl got home, and I said, let's just watch a movie. So that's important. It's important not to be stuck on a strict timeline all the time. But also, if you haven't seen Get Hard, which is what I watched, I know Behind the Times, with Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell, that movie is awesome. It's hysterical. I'm not even a Kevin Hart fan. I almost said Kevin Lee there because he's on my mind because that's what we're talking about. But I'm not even a Kevin Hart fan, but that was a really cool movie. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about UFC Atlantic City. Going to talk a few current events, and we'll get into some Bellator. As you guys heard last week, I had to apologize to John Fitch for not giving Bellator enough love. So I'm trying to right that wrong this week. And, from now on, that's something I got to do better. I got to give Bellator more love, man. So no UFC this upcoming weekend, just Bellator. I say just Bellator, but it's Frank Mir and Fedor Emelianenko fighting. So I'm pretty excited for that one. Hopefully I can catch it. I don't know if you guys remember, but I was talking about my hernia issue. And if you guys listen to that first or second episode, I think it's second episode, I talk about how I don't have an appointment until Saturday the 28th. So that just happens to be when that fight is going on. So we will see how that thing plays out. All right, I guess without further ado, let's just get into the madness, the excitement, the good fights that really was UFC Atlantic City. So I went 7-2. Pretty happy about that. You guys need to go back and listen to previous episodes and listen to my picks because, I'm very rarely wrong. I'm kind of giving you guys a clear cut. If you're a betting person or if you want to sound smart to your friends, just listen to this thing and, I'm very rarely wrong. So let's get into this. Corey Anderson and Pat Cummins. Like I said, Corey Anderson's my boy. I thought Pat Cummins would be a little bit more competitive, but he just looked off for whatever reason. But Corey Anderson, he just went out there and did the damn thing like he should have done. Set a UFC light heavyweight record with 12 takedowns in the fight, won by unanimous decision, and he also was awarded one 10-8 round from two judges. Corey looked great. It was a good fight. And then let's talk about Ricky. This is probably the biggest story on the whole card is Ricky Simon versus Merab Dvalishvili. Excuse me, I hope I'm getting that right. Merab Dvalishvili. So this was a very, very weird fight. I was there, and Ricky Simon was dominating the whole fight. And then I think about the last 40 seconds, Merab Dvalishvili went in for a takedown against Ricky Simon. And if you have not seen this, go back and look at it and give me your own thoughts. Message me on Instagram or something. Merab goes in for a takedown, and when he lands the takedown, but his head hits the mat really hard, and his body kind of went limp. So Ricky Simon can easily turn him over. Now Ricky Simon is in the full mount with a choke in. So now you see Merab's, he's kicking his legs, he's doing everything to stay alive because he's won the whole fight, but he kind of goes out and he comes back in. Rewatching that fight, I actually think Merab went out twice. I'm not a professional, I'm not a referee, but if you listen to some of these guys like Big John McCarthy, probably the best in the business, my favorite, Mr. Mark Goddard, they say the same thing. It looks like he went out twice. Definitely once when he hit his head. Definitely once or twice. Maybe he went out and then came to. It was a weird situation. So what makes it More weird is the round ends. Horn sounds. Merab is on the bottom, and he looks like for a few seconds that he was definitely out. But then he gets right back up, and it's like, what the hell do you do if you're the ref? How do you award that fight? Because he looked like he was out, but usually it takes more than a few seconds to get back up. But what happened is they ended up awarding Ricky Simon with a third-round TKO, which I believe they changed from a TKO because obviously it wasn't a technical knockout. Changed it to a technical submission. Merab has since said that the UFC has awarded him or already talked to him about an immediate rematch in that fight. So we'll see. But that was a very, very weird fight, and that caused all the drama this weekend. Then, Dan Hooker and Jim Miller, first round KO for Dan Hooker. I mean, Dan Hooker did kind of the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but same method of victory that he did in his last win, where he just finds a way to connect his knee with your face, and then you go to sleep. It sucked because I'm a Jim Miller fan. I did pick Dan Hooker to win this fight, but as a Jim Miller fan, it sucked to watch that, especially Jim Miller being a Jersey native. It sucked to see that, but hey, it is what it is. This is the fight business. It's kind of the passing of the torch, you know. Dan Hooker is this new Australian savage, you know, coming in doing work, and Jim Miller's kind of just this vet, man. You know, do I think he has some wins in him? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know who the hell they're gonna give Jim Miller. But then after that, you know, it sucked to see that, but I ran down to get a picture with Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker didn't even let me get my camera ready. He took my phone from me, and he took the picture. And I gave him my congratulations, and you know, he said thanks for coming out. So Dan Hooker's, I'm a fan of that guy, man. He's a nice, legitimate, good guy in the sport. Then Aljamain Sterling, Brett Johns. Man, Aljamain Sterling needed a win after that brutal knockout loss to Marlon Moraes. He was fighting Brett Johns. I think Aljamain was ranked number 8 and Brett Johns was ranked number 14. Brett Johns was undefeated, and basically the whole fight week, Aljamain said, you know, I was that undefeated guy one time, and I needed to lose that first fight, so I'm going to do that for Brett Johns. And he won via unanimous decision. Aljamain Sterling did 30-27, all 3 rounds. Then David Branch, Thiago Santos via first round TKO. I got this one wrong. I really thought that from what we've seen of David Branch, it didn't look great. But, you know, David Branch went out there and just work. I mean, he did some work on Thiago Santos. There's really not too much to talk about in this fight. It was a first round TKO. I think it was 2-3 minutes in. Definitely don't sleep on David Branch like I did. Next fight, Justin Willis defeats Chase Sherman via unanimous decision. 29-28. Had all 3 judges. You know, I thought Justin Willis definitely won the first 2 rounds. Chase Sherman won the 3rd round, I thought. But I underestimated Justin Willis for sure. If you look at him, I thought that Chase Sherman's experience would get him through. And I thought that, you know, Justin Willis would kind of start to tire out like he has done in the past, maybe early in the 2nd round. But that did not happen. So I was wrong about that one too. But, you know, I'm a Justin Willis. If you haven't watched him, for such a big boy, his hands are quick, very quick. Then on to the co-main event, Frankie Edgar defeats Cub Swanson via unanimous decision. Obviously, look, man, both guys needed a win, that's for sure. Frankie came off of that knockout loss from Brian Ortega. He'd never been finished before, ever in his career. And then Cub Swanson coming off that loss to Brian Ortega as well. So Frankie fighting in his hometown, at least kind of close to his hometown. But, you know, Frankie went out there, and it's not what I expected. I expected Frankie to use his wrestling more, which he tried to, but Cub was very elusive, very slippery, it seemed like. And Frankie just outstruck him, which usually, you know, Frankie is very well-rounded, but if the fight doesn't go his way or if he can't land good shots on you, That's what Frankie does, is he takes you down. So that wasn't able to work, but he still outstruck Cub. And then Kevin Lee defeats Edson Barbosa, 5th round TKO. So this fight, Kevin Lee basically dominated. There was that moment in the third that Edson landed that wheel kick on Kevin Lee, made Kevin Lee do the chicken dance, or he was, doing the stanky leg. We don't, you make your own decision. Go back and watch that. But, Kevin Lee looked good. There's all these memes going out right now about Edson landing that wheel kick, which it was a thing of beauty. That's no doubt. But, Kevin Lee just looked dominant. Took Edson down and smashed him. Smashed him. Finally, the doctor came in to look at the cut and said that was enough. Which, kind of leads into my first, not really current event, but the state of the UFC lightweight division right now. It's very weird. You've got Khabib as he's a champion. And you've got Conor, who's an active, at number 1. Tony Ferguson at number 2. Eddie Alvarez at number 3. Number 4, number 5, I would imagine, after the ratings come out, are probably going to be Kevin Lee or Dustin Poirier. Kind of pick your poison there. The UFC lightweight division went from a total mess to more of a mess. The difference is this mess is the mess that you want because you have options. Now, what I don't want to see the UFC do, because it depends on Conor's comeback. If Conor comes back within the next 4 to 5 months, he definitely fights Khabib for the title. But then you have Tony Ferguson, who's out for the foreseeable future recovering from a knee surgery. And now you have Dustin Poirier and Kevin Lee. So what a lot of people were saying, we'd love to see that Dustin Poirier-Kevin Lee fight. I would too. Not right now, though. Not right now. The UFC has a really bad habit of killing stars with crazy momentum. I said that the UFC shouldn't have granted Francis Ngannou the chance to fight Stipe as early as he did, and we saw how that worked out. I'm all about these fighter hype trains, but you got to do it carefully. I would hold off on that Dustin Kevin Lee. Let's figure out if Conor's coming back. You got to give Conor some sort of deadline, and then we figure it out from there. That's how I would do it. If Conor doesn't come back, I would give that shot to Dustin Poirier because he has won 3 in a row. Should really be 4 in a row. I really did think he beat Eddie Alvarez. So you do that fight, and then in the interim, I would do Kevin Lee versus Eddie Alvarez as the number 1 contender. But then you have Tony coming back around that same time, so now you run into, I don't think anyone knows the answers. I don't know the answers. I'm just kind of spitballing what I, as a fan, would like to see. I don't think anyone really knows at this point, what in the world to expect. All right, so that covers fight predictions and just my thoughts right now because on the lightweight division, because that fight meant a lot. That Kevin Lee Edson Barbosa fight meant a lot for the state of that division. And then let's talk about Leslie Smith, man. So if you guys are not familiar with this situation, Leslie Smith was supposed to fight Aspen Ladd in Atlantic City. Aspen Ladd misses weight by 1.8 pounds. She blames it on her period. She said lady issues or something like that. We know what it is. She blames it on her period. I'm not a female. I don't know, how much that affects everything. But what I do know is that there's plenty of women fighters that do make weight on their period. But I digress. So what happens is Leslie Smith says, I'll take that fight, but I'm going to use this as a bargaining tool for my new contract because this is her last fight on her UFC contract. Well, if you don't know anything about Leslie Smith, let me fill you in. Leslie Smith started Project Spearhead, which is she is trying to gather up 30% of the UFC roster to create a union. UFC doesn't want the fighters to create a union for obvious reasons. So she's leading this charge that UFC does not want. Why would they want it? So instead of trying to renegotiate anything, the UFC knowing what she's trying to do, they say, you know what? We're going to pay you your money for weighing in, and then we're going to pay you your win money. Because if we pay you your win money, that counts basically as your last fight with the UFC, and you're released. So they pay her money. So she can go kick rocks, basically. It sucks, man. It sucks. Every other sport, it seems like every major sport has some sort of players association or some sort of union where they can bargain back and forth. And, John Fitch talked about this last episode, but, every major sports league has something that they can bargain back and forth with the big bosses, but not in the UFC. The UFC controls everything. So what do? They release her. Do I get it? From the UFC standpoint, yes, it's a business. You got to do what you got to do. Right, wrong, indifferent, it sucks. But yes, if I was the UFC and there was someone challenging the way that I work things with the egos that are involved, I'd do the same thing. But Leslie Smith won 3 in a row, and some people were talking about, oh, she's just scared to fight Aspen Ladd. Excuse me, Leslie Smith fought Cyborg, the baddest woman on the planet. Do you really think she's scared? Yeah, she lost that fight. All right, so does everyone else against Cyborg. But she took the fight, and that takes guts. Takes serious, serious guts. So, if you are saying that that's her alibi, then you need to learn the sport. But it just sucks, man. As a business, it makes sense. But as a fan, as an advocate of these fighters, it sucks. Which leads me into my next topic. The UFC is allowing Greg Hardy. If you don't know about Greg Hardy, he's a former defensive lineman for the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. Got released and then not hired by any NFL teams because he beat the shit out of his woman. So he beats up his lady. And then no team will take him, so he gets into amateur MMA, wins 3 amateur fights, and now the UFC signs him. What? Are you fucking kidding me? So you're telling me there's a woman fighting for fighter rights, and you let her go on a 3-fight winning streak, ranked, and then Greg Hardy, a known convicted woman beater, you give him a shot after having no professional fights. I cannot wait to tune in. And I don't know who Greg Hardy's fighting. I don't remember the gentleman's name. I think he's an Army guy, actually. But aside from him being an Army vet or what, I might have just made that up. But how about screw Greg Hardy? I will be tuning into that Contender Series episode to see Greg Hardy get smashed, hopefully. That drives me insane. But, now Leslie Smith saying that she's going to take legal action against UFC. I hope it happens. I do. I really do. Kevin Lee explains botched UFC city weight cut, plans to hire a nutritionist for next fight. So Kevin Lee won the fight. I already covered that. But I read that, and my first reaction was, hey, Kevin Lee, why don't you have a nutritionist? You're professional. You've got the money to pay for a nutritionist, especially after in your interim title fight that you had with Tony Ferguson, you missed weight the first time. Luckily, they gave you some time to come back, and you came in at weight. And then he says he misjudged the weight cut. My man, you've had at least 8 weeks for this weight cut in training camp. What do you mean you mistimed it? So that was just frustrating, especially after he says, and I'm a Kevin Lee fan, I'm just being honest here. Kevin Lee watched the Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje fight and says, that's not champion level fight. Yeah, well, neither was your weight. So, just saying, my man, I'm a fan, but let's be careful with those words, before you decide to miss weight. There's not too much else to say. This is kind of a short episode, guys. So, I think I'm going to call it here. I just wanted to give my thoughts on... excuse me. How dare I? I've got to do Bellator picks. There's a few Bellator fights that I'm interested in. So it's being headlined by Frank Mir and Fedor Emelianenko. I will say in that fight, I'm going to go ahead and make picks now. I'm going to cut to the chase. This is a fight that should have happened probably 10 years ago, but the MMA gods didn't want it to happen. That's fine. It's happening now. I will take Frank Mir, probably unanimous decision. I think Fedor's knockout power is still there. I just think that that Mir is just a lot of bit, too experienced to be caught with that. I think he takes him down and, kind of controls the fight. I will take Frank Mir, unanimous decision. All right, Dylan Dennis. If you don't know anything about Dylan Dennis, he's Conor McGregor's boy. He's a jiu-jitsu savant, an absolute wizard, versus Kyle Walker. So Dylan Dennis this is his first MMA fight. So he's no wins, no losses, no draws. Kyle Walker, 2 wins, 4 losses, and I believe all of his losses have come from submission. So obviously that does not bode well for him. I would love to give you guys more in-depth picks, but I cannot BS you guys. I'm really not familiar with a lot of these guys. I will be more familiar after Saturday night, but really not familiar with these guys too much. So that covers UFC Atlantic City. That covers a few current events for you guys. That covers a small portion of Bellator. And then I also have some news I'm pretty excited about. So by the time this gets to you guys, I will be on a show from Top Rated MMA. He's been talking with Eric back and forth. Eric's a nice guy. He's going to have me on a show. We're going to talk some local MMA. We're going to talk maybe some Bellator coming up. Maybe we'll talk some UFC. I don't know, man. But if you haven't seen his show, you should definitely go check it out. Top Rated MMA on YouTube. Go check his show out. He does really good 10-minute videos. Short, sweet, to the point. Go check him out. And then I will be on his show on Thursday at 6 Eastern time. I don't know when exactly that'll air. So that is on Eric. So if it doesn't get to you guys in a timely manner, blame Eric. All right, that's it, guys. Fightbook MMA for all of your fight news. That's where I go for about 85% of my news. And then I love those guys. Great team over there. Until next time, guys. Cheers.